For those watching, I've got with us today musical prodigy Raphael Weinroth-Browne. Is that how you pronounce Weinroth? Is it
Yeah,
Weinroth?
you nailed it.
Cool. To talk about his new album Lifeblood, which comes out on the 3rd of October. So yeah, let's get into it.
For sure.
So it's been a few years since I've spoke to you. So just give us a bit of an up to date on what you've been doing the last few years.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the last time we spoke was after the release of Inheritance, I think. The last Muskox album. So that would have been 2021, still kind of COVID time. So I had released my live album, Worlds Within Live, and Inheritance, actually within a week of each other in summer 2021.
Good year.
Then following that, yeah, it was a good year for releases for sure. Well, we were kind of stuck for a while not playing live. So after that, in 2022, I resumed touring with Leprous. And so I got back on the road in the US and Canada in early 2022. And then immediately after, I got involved in a contemporary dance project with Ottawa Dance Directive here in my hometown of Ottawa, where I live. And that was a very immersive project, which involved me performing my entire Worlds Within album, which was super cool. And then following that, I started to play live quite a lot as a solo artist through 2022. So I was very active as a live performer, playing both material from Worlds Within as well as a plethora of new pieces that I was composing throughout that year, some of which would end up on the Lifeblood album.
Hmm.
And also continuing to work in the dance project. And then 2023, I did a very long tour with Leprous. There was also a fall 2022 tour with Leprous with Apocalyptica. 2023, we did a European headline tour, 40 shows in
Oh,
7 weeks. It was very long, so I was on the road for a long time. And then I went straight into touring again with Ottawa Dance Directive, performing my album with them all the way through May, and then did more performances of that project through the fall. And during the summer, I composed more solo music and did tons of shows. And then was informed that I wouldn't be able to join the next European tour with Leprous in, I guess it was spring 2024, because it was just like a budget thing. Like they weren't able to bring me because they needed another crew member, and it was a short tour, maybe 2 weeks. And I thought, you know what, I really need to record some of this new material I've been working on. I've been performing it everywhere. I have lots of new stuff. I'm, pretty psyched about it. Let's just book the studio. It was clearly like the missing link. I had been playing live a lot and sort of building a new audience here at home, but also online. And I decided that I should really just commit and make this album. I had been kind of holding off for a while because I felt that I wasn't necessarily ready to realize this music to its fullest potential. And I really wanted to make it as good as I possibly could. And I didn't want to compromise in any way. And being a bit of a perfectionist, it's easy to get scared by the prospect of creating something that you really care about. It's like you care so much about the music that you almost don't want to concretize it and finalize it and just sort of have to live with that version that you've created. It's almost easier for it to stay an idea in your head forever so that you don't have to commit to anything. But I realized, like, okay, now's the time. I'm not going to be going on this tour. Let's book the studio. So I did that. And then that was the beginning of a very long process of recording this album, which is called Lifeblood, which will be coming out in October. And initially I booked 10 days in the studio to record, just to track everything. And then I could deal with the mixing later. But it ended up being a much longer process that basically stretched out through 2024. And it was the most challenging and the most grueling and the most expensive album I've ever made by a long shot. and it involved a lot of trips to Toronto, which is where I recorded the album. So it was a lot of back and forth, a lot of really long days. I would go there and then I would just book an Airbnb so that I had nothing to come back to except just an empty room basically. And I would just work 8 hours during the day in the studio, record until I was blue in the face, and go home and then be really tired and go to sleep early and just repeat. And I also worked very closely with the engineer on that record, Darren McGill, on pre-mixing the album because I had such a specific idea of how I wanted everything to be. So he was very involved in actually shaping the sound of the album too. And so we worked all the way until end of October 2024, and then I sent it off to be mixed. And then earlier this year, I went on another tour with a dance company from the UK called James Wilton Dance. So last summer, I composed a new work, basically an album's worth of music for them. They commissioned me to write it, and we did a show together called Bach Reimagined, which I toured throughout the UK and in Germany. And so that tour lasted about 7 weeks, and that was earlier this spring. And concurrently with that, I was also doing all the production stuff for Lifeblood. So I was getting the master, the finalized, getting the artwork finalized, organizing music video shoots, going and shooting those music videos, which were largely done in Poland with Group of 13. And then since then, I've been back home mostly, and I've been preparing for this album release. And it's been a ton of stuff to manage, but yeah, making records takes time, and it's better not to rush it if you can. But also, you don't want to miss the boat and never do it. Like, you have to commit and bite the bullet, and it's going to be hard a lot of the time because you have to face, you have to face things that feel uncomfortable, like your performance not feeling good to you, or not being satisfied with the songs. It's something missing, or having to be okay with certain details and just having to live with them. But ultimately, I think if you really dive deep into the details and you just keep reworking things and you keep doing it again and again, eventually you get to a point where you've done it to the best of your ability. And then you can rest easy knowing that you've done the absolute best job you possibly can. And that's how I feel about this record. I feel like it's the best thing that I've ever done, and that I really put the time in and I worked super hard, and I don't feel any regrets about any sections. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't go back and change anything. It's like, it's how I want it to be. So, yeah.
Cool. We will get into the Lifeblood stuff. Just before that, though, firstly, I will say, just to put it out there, that Lifeblood, you're right, it's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. Like Worlds of In is a great record, but you just seem to improve on every metric, basically. So all that work's definitely paid off in my opinion, anyway. It's funny. Anytime I talk to you, or to be fair, music in Canada at the minute is insane. The level of quality that comes from there at the minute is just a cut above everyone else. I've listened to a few albums from bands in Canada this year, and it's really good stuff. But with you and Nathaniel, I feel like almost a sycophant, because I've got nothing. There's no criticisms of anything you guys do. It's always absolutely immense, and it really resonates with me. I can't give you enough good words, basically. So with that, obviously, so as a musician myself, bass player, so when I was learning the instrument, I used to look at, I'm quite outside thinking myself, and I used to look at people like Justin Chancellor and Ryan Martini, people that really pushed the instrument.
Yeah.
So for you, obviously, as a cello player, I think you do that, and you push things into these unconventional spheres. So you were classically trained, were you? I imagine you are classically trained. So I find that really fascinating, because you're not only classically trained, so you've obviously been sort of molded to follow the status quo, but at the same time, you manage to have this sort of outside thinking. So how did that come about? Do you push the cello as far as it can go? Is it like that, an objective of yours as a player?
Totally. Yeah. Innovation is a high priority for me, and going against the grain. I wouldn't even say that it's a conscious choice as much as an instinctive thing. It's kind of funny actually that you mentioned this, the classical training and the status quo and so on. I really feel that, learning classical music and being in any educational structure and having to deal with authority and dealing with rules is so hard for me. And like absorbing instructions and doing things exactly as you're told has always been so hard for me, that I think I've always retained, as you say, like a sort of independent idea of what I want to create and outside thinking, as you were saying. So it's always existed. Like there was just no way it could be beaten out of me, really. So I think I learned the technique and the chops, and I absorbed, music theory, and all that was really interesting to me. And I always wanted to be good at it, but I had a really hard time absorbing and sort of assimilating the classical music aesthetic and playing style when I was learning the repertoire. It was really difficult for me to approach it and understand that intuitively for a long time. And I think especially as a young person, you grew up listening to metal and like, your whole sort of mental framework around music is kind of, it's sort of based around rock, and that paradigm. So for me, I was always just importing that understanding of music into my cello playing and into my conception of music as a whole, regardless of whether it was chamber music or actual rock instruments. I always had that concept in my head. And now more and more I think about things like audio engineering and frequencies and sound, like tone shaping, but more from an audio engineer's perspective when I play cello, so that I can find sounds organically with the bow, for instance, in the same way that you might do like a frequency sweep on an EQ band or something like that, or you throw a plug-in on something. Like I'm trying to figure out how to do that acoustically and then maybe augment that with pedals. But I really think on those terms, trying to sort of integrate all of my musical experiences and preferences, and to bring in perspectives to a so-called classical string instrument that are not really native to it or that aren't traditionally used. So my approach to it is so idiosyncratic, and it's just become more and more that way with time because of the music I listened to growing up, which was very diverse and wide-ranging, and because of the experiences that I've had playing with all kinds of musicians from different backgrounds, different countries, and just basically kind of creating a very distinctive voice from that range of experiences and preferences.
So when it's like the chicken and egg, what came first? Were you exposed to classical music first, or was it, I don't know, from being in school or whatever, like listening to rock music first?
It's kind of both at the same time.
So did you get more enjoyment out first?
Yeah, I feel like they sort of developed concurrently. So I think that I always heard rock music on the radio from a very young age. I had actually a little radio in my bedroom as a kid. So I would wake up early in the morning, as like kids do, and they wake up before their parents, and then I would turn on the radio and then I would listen to whatever was playing, in the like mid 90s, I guess. And so I was just kind of exposed to that. And I started playing cello when I was like 8 or 9. And I was exposed to classical music because of the records that we had at home. So just in general, like my parents had a big record collection, which spanned a variety of genres. But I remember hearing the Bach cello suites, and I was just aware of the instrument. I thought it was cool, and I thought it was different. And I always wanted to do something that wasn't the norm, that wasn't the thing that everyone was doing. That always felt right to me in a way, to occupy a less crowded space, where there was more room to do something new and to be unique, which I've learned has become very useful in the arts nowadays. And I think it always was, but I think maybe now more than ever, with the saturation of content that's out there, and the amount of artists that are making music, and the amount of virtual artists, you might say, that are making music. It's like, yeah, you really need to stand out. But coming back to that, so I knew about cello, and I thought it was cool, and I wanted to play it, but I didn't really know exactly why, but it just felt good. I just had like this instinctive pull towards it. I was listening to rock music, and I remember, hearing Metallica on the radio and thinking that was cool, and always being attracted to the heavier sounding rock music. The more distorted guitar tones and more aggressive music. It just always appealed to me, even as a young kid. So then I think everything just sort of evolved out of that. And, as one does, you go deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, and into more and more obscure and heavier things. And that was basically it.
So if you were to, just humor me with this, but if you were to pick two classical composers and two contemporary rock bands of the time, which the two from each side would you say had the biggest impact on you as an adolescent?
I'd say on the classical side, J.S. Bach and Arvo Pärt, the Estonian composer. And I would say that to this day, they're still my favorite classical composers. So one, of course, from many hundreds of years ago, and the other one who's still alive today. And in terms of metal music in particular, I think Tool was a huge influence and still is. And probably Opeth or Meshuggah, one of those bands, I would say. Like, both of those bands have been hugely influential.
Definitely on the prog side.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like they have such an incredible discography that you could just, if you were on a desert island, you could find so much from those bands to enjoy from any of their albums, really. Or you could construct like a great set list or playlist where you handpicked one track from each album, and it would be an incredible journey, and also I think a real showcase of their progression. And I think in the case of many bands, definitely Tool and Meshuggah and Gojira, for instance, like all those bands have done something really interesting in their careers where they essentially refined one idea. It's like they found something really special that only they could do, and that sounded exactly like them. And then with every album, it's like they somehow created a more refined iteration of that, so they could get closer and closer to the source of what it is that makes them who they are. And I think that's a very powerful lesson for any artist in terms of their evolution, in terms of finding a sound and honing it. Study those bands, because they've found something and they just deliver it with confidence. And even though we recognize it and we go, oh yeah, lots of people have imitated it, still it sounds very authentic, and it's delivered with such unflinching sort of authority. Like they're not ashamed to just be who they are. And I think that's super cool. Even if it's like, oh, that's kind of a simple riff. It's like, yeah, but listen to the way it's delivered with confidence. It's like nothing is more powerful.
Yeah, it's funny when Tool, because obviously it took God knows how many years for them to release Fear Inoculum.
It was 13 years, yeah.
Yeah, so I had like this really obsessive period with them around 2009 or 10 or something. I absolutely obsessed. And then as the years went on, I'd listened to those albums so many times, I kind of thought, I kind of lost all my anticipation for it.
Right.
When it did finally drop, it was absolutely incredible. Like it just brought me straight back to how much I loved them back in the day, and it just shows you how incredible they are as musicians.
Yeah. And there's something very powerful about familiarity too. When something's familiar and new, when it's like it reminds you of something that you hold very close to you because of all the experiences you've had, but yet it's also a new thing. And so you're exploring it for the first time, but it reminds you of all the things you love about that artist. Yeah, the power of nostalgia is not to be underestimated.
No, it's not. Yeah, so we'll get into the reason why we're talking now. Lifeblood. So
Yeah,
like I said, absolutely amazing album.
thank you.
So what was? I mean, you alluded to it anyway. That you said that it's to do with sort of delivering something for fans and feeling like kind of obligated to do it. But what was the driving force for making it, and why releasing it now?
Great question. Well, it's a collection of pieces that I really enjoy and that I hold very close to me. And some of those pieces are quite old. So for instance, the tracks Labyrinthine and Netherreal and Winterlight are all quite old. They actually predate Worlds Within. So I wrote those probably, I think Labyrinthine was like 2016. So 9 years ago, Netherreal maybe more like 2018, and Winterlight probably 2015. So there's some super old stuff that I was really dying to just record and get out. And then also some newer stuff that I felt was more representative of where I was at, let's say in the last 3 years, sort of where I've been at with my solo cello composition style and what my live shows are like. And I wanted to refine that and make a very extroverted statement in contrast with Worlds Within, which was more atmospheric and I guess a little less in your face, and very much by design, because it's just not that type of record. It's not a record that's showy in any way. It's really it just is what it is. And I like that. But with this record, I wanted to be, I wanted to make a bit more of a bold statement. And it's actually kind of the record I always wanted to make, the solo album that I wanted to introduce myself with, but I didn't feel ready. When I did Worlds Within, it just felt more manageable from a technical standpoint. Like it wasn't as difficult to execute from a cello perspective. It was still a challenging record to make, but this one infinitely more. I think that the material in Lifeblood, it requires a lot of virtuosity, a lot of precision. You can't really hide anywhere. It's just in the forefront. So I really had to commit to that and just be very performance focused. And I spent a lot of time on each section trying to get the best takes. And, I would run something for like an hour, do like 50 takes of something. And then at the end, finally get the take that I wanted. And I find that this is the case for me, that I tend to actually improve over a long stretch. Like some people hit a lot of diminishing returns rather quickly and they're not able to improve their performance. But this was like an endurance test, and it was almost like a test of focus and like a meditative practice of just running takes again and again and like pushing myself and seeing where my limits were and realizing that actually for me, I tend to get into a task after like 20 minutes of doing it. And then after those 20 minutes, my brain is just like solely focused on that. Like it's like that thing that I'm working on has just taken over my life, and like that's all I can think about. And then I just, it's because I'm so absorbed in it that I eventually am able to just hone in on the details. It's like you've mastered everything else and you're just trying to fine tune these few sections. So I would do this with almost every part. It was grueling. It's super intense to be in the studio with me because I'm just like again, until it sounds like a record. And I know I can't get it any better than that. And that was really important for this album to basically render it in such pristine quality that all the ideas that I cared about so deeply would translate. And so for similar reason, I went to a bigger studio with a really nice live room, and took a lot of time, and we recorded with lots of nice mics and really, really captured the room and got a very full and complete sound. So that's sort of, I guess, what the recording process looks like for an album like this. In terms of the concept and the impetus for the album, really it's just music that I cared about a lot, that I wanted to release. I wanted to create more momentum in my solo career, and I knew that having a new album would allow me to do that. So there was a demand for a record, but I would say it was definitely for me first, rather than for the fans. Sorry, fans, but hope you guys dig it anyway. But yeah, I mean, and I think any piece of art, you have to make it for yourself, and you have to satisfy yourself. Otherwise, people will feel that. They'll feel that you're not doing it for a genuine reason, that it's not coming from an authentic place. So it was absolutely an intense passion project that I poured myself into 110%, that I basically have been working on for the last nearly 2 years. In terms of the material, so I've released 3 singles from that album, the first 3 tracks, so Lifeblood, Possession, and Ophidian. All of those pieces are fairly recent, like Possession and Ophidian were both written in 2024, and they're really the result of sort of playing in this Middle Eastern influenced style, which sort of accidentally blew up on social media at the end of 2023. I was just posting some rehearsal clips of me playing Lifeblood, just preparing for a show, and I had just basically recorded myself playing the whole song, and then I just uploaded some clips to social media, and they went extremely viral, and that led to a huge demand for more music like that. And I was sort of just in a place where I wanted to write more music like that anyway, because it had been something that I wanted to express for a long time, that particular style, the sort of combination of metal and Middle Eastern influences on cello with this live looping medium that I have been using now for a number of years for my shows. And so I basically took a few different ideas, a few different seeds of compositions, and just developed them. So Possession actually came from another reel that I made. It was really like a short composition intended for social media, and then I expanded it into a full piece. And Ophidian was a similar thing, where I basically cannibalized an older piece that I had written for my band The Visit, and then I just turned it into a new composition altogether that I thought was sort of conducive to the style that I was already exploring. And so I was kind of leaning into what I knew already worked. Like, I had done the market research. I'd made a bunch of posts that had done really well, and people were asking for an album. They wanted to hear fully realized tracks. And I was kind of going, whoa, okay, like, there's no way I can get this stuff done as fast as they want it. Like, everyone kind of wants everything now, essentially. It's just like, okay, give me the full song now. Like, okay, record a full version. And, it's like, yeah, it takes a while to do that. It takes a lot of money too. Like, you know what I mean? But yeah, I'll do it. But, if money were no object and I could do it, at hyper speed, of course I would. But that's just not possible. But anyway, I thought, okay, these are 3 pieces that are going to work really well: the Lifeblood, Possession, and Ophidian. And they're all very sort of, very athletic, very intense, dramatic, rhythmic, and cinematic. And so I thought they would all work well on the album. And so a lot of the, I guess, reasoning for creating this track list and releasing this particular album was predicated around the knowledge that those pieces would go down well, because I already knew that super rough versions that I'd posted were received extremely well online. And so I just basically committed to that. However, it was also really difficult to try and capture the energy of those raw demos in a studio recording.
Right.
Because you want capture this sense of abandon and freedom and sort of this easy flow. Like everything is just kind of in the pocket and it just feels almost improvised. And in some cases it was improvised. And then to somehow translate that into a studio recording so that the performance still feels like it's being done for the first time, like this music is being created for the first time, and it's not overly rehearsed and kind of just produced to death. So I wanted that feeling of live intensity and the feeling that it was coming out of me like a stream of consciousness, but also with the polish and the precision of a really good studio recording. So that kind of brings me, I guess, to another interesting aspect of this record, which is that it's very autobiographical. So it's more evidently a record about myself and about my musical journey. And I'm putting myself also more at the center of the branding of the album in terms of the visuals and everything, which is obviously pretty clear from like the photos and other visuals, you know, in the music videos, where there's kind of like a storyline, a narrative throughout. And again, I'm kind of making myself the protagonist there. So with the track Lifeblood, for instance, the title track and the music video that goes with it, there's this idea of music being my life force. And it's the thing that gets me up in the morning. It's the thing that has sort of manifested everything else in my life, you know, on both a career level and a personal level. And so it's very much about the energy around music and what I've given to it and the way I'm really all in with it in a very intense way. It's like with the album, I think it's a perfect example where I feel like I'm just a servant to the art. And that's like, I really live for that. You know, I want to make the best record possible. I want to make a record I've never heard before, and to be able to just sit back and enjoy it at the end of the day. And hopefully other people will too. And it's so intense for me that like other things just pale in comparison. So it didn't matter like how much money I needed to spend or how, you know, much sleep I needed to lose, or how much time I had to put in. It just needed to be done. And so this type of devotion and almost like a spirituality around music, this feeling that music is like the source of a lot of the adventures and, you know, the circumstances in my life, was really central to the concept of the record. And this idea that, you know, the music was like this lifeblood, like flowing back into my veins. And, you know, so in this video, it's like you have this sort of comatose figure lying on the ground and then on top of these roots and branches. And then there's like this sort of dream vision of, you know, myself playing in this beautiful refectory, which is where we shot the video. And then I sort of awaken and then explore this like abandoned castle. It was like a monastery that we were in, and then find the cello. And then it's like the cello is like this old friend, or it's like a lover from a past life, and like I'm reconnecting with it. And then like I sort of remember who I am, and that's sort of the general narrative of that Lifeblood video. And then the track Possession was the music video for that was basically sort of an illustration of my challenges with performance anxiety and feeling judged by audiences, and sort of the inner struggle, which most people don't really know about. Like often you go and you watch a performer and you think, wow, it looks like they're so in control, they're so confident. And really, it's like they're just a basket case, you know, they're just like a bundle of nerves and stuff. And it's so often that way that we have so many hang-ups as artists. And so I wanted to kind of illustrate that through a music video where basically I'm performing for this audience and they're all wearing masks, so I can't read their expressions. I don't know how they feel about the music, which is often how I feel when I'm performing. I'm like, I don't know what they're thinking. Like, maybe they don't like it. Maybe they know what I could be doing better, you know, and having all these anxieties around it, and realizing that actually I'm just projecting my fears onto them. And so there's this scene at the end where you see me in the audience and I have a mask on, I take off the mask and it's just my face, and you realize that actually it's just myself looking back at me from the audience, giving me these cold stares. And the idea is that I'm just projecting my own thoughts and fears onto these people, but really, it's not them, it's me, it's my own inner battle. And then I'm left alone in the theater to sort of confront that inner darkness, which is illustrated with that sort of like corpse paint. And then the track Ophidian, I wanted to create a duel with myself where I was playing against myself, but it was like really a representation of these inner voices, inner and outer voices. Is the idea that, as you're growing up and sort of finding your path as a person, you'll encounter a lot of voices telling you to do something that's more traditional or more acceptable, to not rock the boat, to not do something too risky, that you should be, responsible and organized and all this kind of stuff. And then there's this other part of you that's like maybe naturally chaotic and just wants to do what it wants to do and doesn't give a shit about any of that. And it's like the battle between those two, and ultimately embracing your inner chaos and embracing your authenticity, even if people don't always understand it. Like understanding that you need that part of yourself to feel okay and to feel happy, basically. And that by abdicating that, you're losing your sense of personal identity, especially as an artist. And that's the thing that makes you who you are. So it's important to embrace it, even if it's hard for other people to understand. And in the end, like that character sort of wins the duel, essentially. So it's this idea of embracing your inner darkness too, and like integrating your shadow side. And that's sort of what this album cover is about too, where we have this beautiful tree that's, blossoming and flourishing, but it has this heart at its roots. And then these snakes also that are forming the roots of the tree. And so there's this kind of above, as above, so below sort of imagery, I guess, where what you realize is that all of the beauty that you see is also a product of all the darkness that you don't necessarily see. And that one can't all necessarily exist without the other. You almost need that balance. But it's also a way of transmuting that sort of dark energy and that shadow side into something beautiful that people can appreciate and that can be constructive in the world, and that can be inspiring. So that's very much a part of it. But it's this idea that you're always having to balance these opposing forces of the transcendence of creative flow with the consuming intensity of ambition. And that ambition can also corrupt you, and it can just make you hungry for more power and more influence. And when you become successful, it just makes you want more success. But then you have to ask yourself, why do I want this success? And what does that constitute? And am I doing it for success now, or am I doing it because making art fulfills me? So it's a question of understanding the energy with which you do things and with which you make these offerings. And actually, Nathaniel makes a really good analogy about this. He always talks about like the energy of the art. It's like, is your energy burning clean? It's like you have this motor or something in your vehicle, and it's like, is it just like polluting, or does the energy burn clean? So I really like that analogy for the way in which we present our offerings as artists, the way in which we show up in the world, and understanding that like success is a byproduct of making great art that resonates, but it isn't the main goal as much as it is very tantalizing. But it's that struggle and that feeling of being pulled between the two that I find really interesting. And I wanted to explore both the inspiration of being, being consumed by an idea, and, being visited by this, sort of otherworldly force that gives you, it's almost like it's a gift. You receive a creative idea, and then you birth this art, but it comes from some other place, like the non-physical or whatever. There's that beautiful aspect of creation and inspiration, but there's also the dark side of, wanting to be a bigger artist and wanting to, rack up the numbers on your videos and your streams, and wanting to be competitive, and all of this other stuff that can come with it too, that we don't necessarily acknowledge, because in the arts, we're so focused on optics, and it's like, yeah, everything's going great. Yeah, I'm making beautiful art, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but also everyone's stressed and anxious, and everyone has challenges with their mental health, and people are quitting the industry. And, so it's important to also acknowledge that side and to be real about it. And I think that the music and the art is a great place to channel that, and kind of present these two facets of that dichotomy in a place that we can just enjoy and appreciate, rather than, just doom scrolling and being depressed about it. So anyway, long answer. Hopefully I was able to satisfy your question there.
That was good. Actually, you describing a lot of the backstory behind Lifeblood. I've been listening to it the last couple of days. It's pretty solid. And one thing I took away from it was the narrative is very much there. And one of the key things I took from it was the first three songs are very much Middle Eastern inspired, but then when you get to Pyre, it feels like this liminal period that's slowly transitioning into more of your, I wouldn't say, more like not your comfort zone, but it's stuff that we're more familiar with. And you saying there that they're older songs kind of makes sense, but that's not to take away from the songs after Pyre, because like Labyrinthine's an absolutely like a complex beast of a track. Like probably my favorite song on the whole album.
Sweet. Awesome.
Yeah, really good. You touched on it, the Middle Eastern scale. How did that? I mean, how did that even come into your writing?
Yeah, it was also
an unusual scale, and it's not something you really hear a lot in popular music. So when you first dropped, was Lifeblood the first song you dropped?
Yeah, it was the first single from the record.
Yeah, so obviously when I heard that, I thought that's really different, because it's not something you really hear a lot.
Definitely. Yeah, I think in Western music, it's very unusual, especially more popular Western music. It's really unusual to hear like a Phrygian mode. You know what I mean? In metal, we do hear it in guitar solos and riffs. And that's sort of where the bleed over happens, I think. But again, I was just exposed to it growing up. So, I grew up in a household where like we had CDs of artists from the Arab world and from Iran, and, this, I guess, what's called Swana region, right? So like, the Middle East and North Africa. And so, yeah, I had heard a lot of this music, and from a very early age, and I was really enchanted by it. And so we listened to it on CDs and also on the radio, because there were campus radio stations here in Ottawa that played a lot of that music. I remember specifically on Sundays, there was a program that played at lunchtime. So like, we'd be having lunch and just the radio would be on, and there'd be all this amazing music from different parts of the world. And so I just kind of heard that stuff like it was normal. It just felt very normal for me to hear those scales and those rhythms and that approach to music making, those sounds and whatnot. So then as a teenager, I had the chance to see some really amazing ensembles performing here and in Montreal. And, I went to see a group called Dastan Ensemble, which is a Persian classical music group. And they performed a couple of times here in my hometown. And I went to Montreal and saw Le Trio Joubran, which is a Palestinian oud trio. And I saw some other concerts like that. So I was really very, very moved and very fascinated with both the music and also the instruments, because there are all these cool instruments that were very rare here. Like you couldn't really find them at a music store unless it was a very specific and specialized music store. So I always loved instruments that were non-standard and exotic, for lack of a better word. I was just interested in all kinds of instruments, and I was really sort of fascinated with the idea of playing lots of cool instruments, not just like guitar and piano and drums and things like that, but, like the oud and saz and, these instruments that you would see in Turkey, let's say. And just being able to play them and being able to experiment with them on a record. Already when I was super young, I kind of dreamed about that idea. And I had a few chances also to try some of these instruments. And it was really like a kid in the candy store moment for me, but more than that, I was just like, oh, I really want to do this. And so that music was always there. And I think in the same way that I had a really hard time integrating classical music, I think I felt that this music somehow spoke to my soul more directly and always felt easier actually to express. So contrary to what some, I think it actually really is my comfort zone to play in those scales and to improvise in that sort of modality. I think it also played into my desire to not be like a normal Canadian kid. But it wasn't like a conscious desire. I realized this as an adult. I was really like, I just didn't identify with traditional and common preferences. And in fact, anytime I see something that's common, that, everyone has this, or everyone watches this, or everyone listens to this, then I'm always a little bit reticent about getting into that. I'm like, well, then I'll just be like everybody else. I don't want to be a conformist. So it's always been in me, very instinctively, and it's not just to be a contrarian necessarily, but I've always felt that instinctively. So I think I always wanted to make music that didn't feel specifically Canadian or Western. And when I started playing cello, I was already trying to improvise in those scales a little bit. And then I heard metal music that used some aspects of those scales. And I thought, I think there's some compatibility here. Even before I heard bands like Nile, that, use the sort of like Egyptian mythology as their basis. I thought, I'm sure I could do something Middle Eastern and metal. That would be really cool. So yeah, that's kind of maybe at the root of why I have always been fascinated with that music, and why it's such a deep and integral part of my style. Yeah, that's basically it, I think.
Yeah, cool. When you saw a bit of a, not to put you in a corner, but what would you say with Worlds Within, where do you think the weaknesses were, and how did you feel you addressed those shortcomings for Lifeblood?
Oh, great question. So when I finished Worlds Within, actually, I felt really happy with it. I thought, okay, this is about 99% of what I wanted to achieve when I set out to record it. That album was much less developed before I went into the studio. It was really just a bunch of voice memos on my phone.
Right.
And yeah, seriously,
Wow.
I had improvised a number of sections, but I was able to reach the point where I had basically created the general shape of each part, and I had placed them in a sequence. So I knew what I was going to do, but I went into the studio without having a fully formed arrangement. But I had all the parts, and I thought, okay, I'm going to record the bed tracks. Because it's a loop-based album, you can kind of do that, right? You can essentially record a certain amount of a given part, and then that forms just the entire basis for this track. And you can extend or trim as needed because they're loops. So they're just kind of like the building blocks. So I would do that, and then I would record improvised solos. So like the tracks Unending 1, Unending 2, From Within 2, I guess there's a solo on From Above. All those solos were actually improvised in the studio. The solos on the Tumult Suite were composed in advance because they're a lot more technical, and those pieces are very fast, and the arrangements are a bit more specific. But a lot of that was done on the fly. It was like I created this very kind of crude block in the studio, about 55 minutes of music, and then I trimmed it down to 40 minutes. And then I composed these specific solo sections to help narrate the story. I think that if I could name one specific thing that could be better about the album, I really think the composition is good. And that has been kind of shown to me through all the live performances I've done of the record. Like, I never thought that that album could be done live when I made it. Then I forced myself to learn how to do it live so I could do release shows. And then it became this thing that I played live a lot. And I felt like I had really gotten a good handle on. And I really enjoyed immersing myself in that when I performed it. I think, honestly, the tones on the record, just sort of the sound, like, it's the right sound for what it is. But I think that if it had been recorded in a nice big live room and we had captured more direct, like, not direct, but close mic sound, that would probably make it a little bit more 3D sounding. Like, it would have more of a feeling of sort of foreground, middle ground, and background. The way the record sounds is very much like you have this wash. It's kind of like a watercolor painting, or it's actually like the resin paintings that are on the cover art, which is part of why, they're so compatible. But we relied a lot on the sound of amplifiers. And I love running cello through amps. Like, don't get me wrong. And I did it on Lifeblood too. Everything goes through an amp, but it's about the blend. So the thing that makes Lifeblood feel so much more in your face and so much more vivid in a way, and kind of intense, is that it relies much more on the sound of the close mics, the acoustic sound of the cello. And there's a lot of harmonic saturation to, like, bring out all of those frequencies that, make the lead lines pop, for instance. And then that make the chugs feel really beefy and powerful. And there's a lot of definition. But that was achieved by relying less on amp tone and more on acoustic sound. Also, I would say that the room mics, we had tons of room mics, which I wasn't able to do on Worlds Within because of the spaces it was recorded in. There, the room mics really contributed, I think, to the fullness of the sound on Lifeblood. Whereas with Worlds Within, I mean, most of it was recorded in a basement with a low ceiling, actually. So it was done in a studio, but it was more DIY in that sense. We just didn't have the same sound sources. We didn't have the same range of microphones to draw on. The sound of the room plays a big role. When you're recording an acoustic instrument, you can't underestimate that, because if you compare an instrument, the same instrument being played in two different rooms, you can really tell the difference. So it is really helpful to record in the best room possible and record with good strings. That's also very much underrated. Like, record with fresh strings and really good ones that will translate well on recording. Use the right microphones and get great takes. And I think with Worlds Within, we got good takes. We didn't get as good takes. And I think that with Lifeblood, I just spent more time and more money. We were more scrupulous, basically. So those are the main reasons why I think Lifeblood is like a bigger sounding record that feels more vivid. And I think, if there's anything I would change on Worlds Within, it might be that production aspect, in terms of just how the sounds are captured, not how they were mixed so much, but like the sound sources. And I think that, the sound of an instrument in a room is really important. And amps and distortion, interestingly enough, actually make any instrument, but definitely cello, sound smaller. You think, it's going to make it sound bigger, but with the amount of distortion and compression and everything, like, it actually like flattens it out and makes it sound less open. And what I really want is for the cello to sound open and generous and resonant, even if it's crunchy and distorted and angry. Like, I don't want to lose that body in the sound. So, but here's the funny thing to kind of cap this all off, is that, like, would it still be Worlds Within if it had a different sound? If it didn't sound oceanic, if it didn't sound like everything was sort of blending together like this washy painting? It's like asking, is it still And Justice for All if the bass was louder? It's like, that's how the record sounds. It has a very clear sort of tonal palette to it, and you get used to that. It becomes the record. So I've asked myself that a few times recently. It's like, well, if I had done that in the same studio with the same setup, with the same strings and whatnot, like, would it still be Worlds Within? Would it be right for that record?
Yeah.
Maybe not, you know? Only time will tell, I guess. Maybe I'll revisit it and try some things, but I've already done, you know, a live album where I went the other way and made it more raw sounding. And
well, I was just
I think
about to say that. I was just about to say that, like Lifeblood makes the recorded version of Worlds Within sound like very roomy and like almost austere. Like it's really stripped down in comparison to what's going on in Lifeblood. There's a lot of stuff going on in there, but the live album of Worlds Within I actually prefer because it has like you said there. Obviously, you translated it to play live, and then correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you got more of a feel for the songs, and that maybe that's why you did the live version. And to me, it feels like another level. Like you've taken these songs and taken them to the next level, and even the sound sounds more rich.
For sure. Yeah. Well, we used a better close mic. That's a big part of it. And we recorded in a nicer room, like a more generous room with, you know, wood paneling and a higher ceiling. And I knew the songs better. And so I had more of an ability to convey emotionally what I wanted to achieve there. So I think that's part of why I revisited the record, was so that I could kind of transmit everything that I had learned in this interim period from the time that I released Worlds Within to the point where I thought, okay, I want to make a live version of Worlds Within that feels like a show. And even since then, like, because I've performed it so much more since I did that live album, I would say I would do it infinitely better. But anyway, yeah, it was important for me to create that at that time, I think, regardless. Yeah, there's something to be said for understanding not only the general arrangements of a record, but to know the emotional vibe you want to get, and to be in a position to deliver the lines, so to speak. It's like you want to be able to convey that intention in your playing with full conviction and full control and mastery of that particular part. And if you're kind of like, I don't really know what I'm doing with this part, but I'm just gonna, like, yeah, I didn't really allow myself too much of that on Lifeblood. Like, everything was pretty prepared. It's like, okay, I know what this part should sound like before I've recorded it. Let's just commit now. And things tend to translate better when you already have played them live a bunch, which I had. In this case, I had composed these pieces to be played live, and then I went and recorded them, and I think that benefited the process a lot because I already had this muscle memory and experience of how it feels to perform these parts from multiple occasions in the past.
Would you, obviously, Lifeblood's not even out yet, but would you consider doing a live version of Lifeblood?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a good question. I don't know, like, the thing about it is that it's a record that's more a collection of pieces rather than one sort of continuous piece, which is what Worlds Within was. So, I mean, if it was a particular venue or setting that I felt really benefited that, or that would really sound awesome, and maybe if it was a video, look awesome, then I might take advantage of that possibility. I think that with Lifeblood, I would play every track on the record live except for Winterlight, which really is more, it's almost an interlude, even though it's like 5 minutes long, but really that's a piece that's difficult to reproduce live, even though its initial incarnation was just a one-take improvisation. And then I turned that into, I tried to recreate essentially my improv on the record, and I tried to keep this spontaneity and this feeling of like, I'm making this once and I'm never going to do it again. Right. But it's in a weird tuning, and I think that track I would probably leave out. But the other tracks, I would do all of those live for sure. But they're all kind of in different tunings. Like Lifeblood and Possession are in one tuning, then Ophidian, Pyre, Labyrinthine, and the Glimmering are all in another, and then Netherreal is in a totally different tuning. So the challenge would probably be doing a show where I could transition between these tunings effectively. But I wouldn't rule it out, but it would probably be more like a mixed set list. If I did a live album, it would probably be like the hits from Lifeblood plus like the hits from the next album, let's say, and maybe stuff from Worlds Within, who knows. But I tend to not mix those tracks, actually. I feel like there's another body of work that I'm releasing, which includes the Speed of Light single, and which came out in May. And I feel like those tracks and the Lifeblood tracks are more compatible because they're composed around, like they were composed more around the same time. And so it's kind of easier to integrate them into a cohesive set list.
Right. Well, like you are the first person. Normally, I don't listen to live albums, and you're the first person that's managed to have me actually prefer the live version to generally I prefer studio recordings.
Right.
But I just feel like you really put a good twist on the live version of Worlds Within, where it ended up being a superior product. So if you did do it, it'd be interesting to see how they differed from the studio recordings of Lifeblood.
Yeah, it's super cool to hear.
So what do you feel now that you're able to enjoy the promotion for this album now? What do you feel you learned from the album as a person?
Wow, so many things. Well, I learned the value of tenacity. Not that I didn't really know it before, but I think that just sticking with it and planning really well is important. I think when you make a record, not rushing things, giving yourself enough time, and committing to your vision. Like if something doesn't satisfy you, even like a small thing, just change it. Just make it what it needs to be, because no one knows how much time you spent. No one knows how much money you spent. I mean, you can tell them, but they don't really care most of the time. What they want is the product that they're going to receive. They just want to be able to enjoy it at the end of the day. They don't care about your excuses. So don't give yourself any excuses to make. Just like make something that you really feel good about and take your time and do it right, you know. And if you think that something is weak, then just chop it out or change it, you know, but take the time. And often if you work for a long enough process, over a long enough period, you actually have time to redact your initial idea because you realize, oh, you know what, actually this isn't working, let's change this. And I've done this as well in the past. Like with Worlds Within, I did go back and re-record sections that I thought were not quite up to snuff. And on Lifeblood, I definitely did that. Like there were parts, for instance, where I had recorded with a set of strings that weren't really translating in the way I wanted, but I didn't really know how to articulate it. And then I used a different set just to try it out. And this is when we recorded Labyrinthine. I recorded 4 other tracks and I hadn't done Labyrinthine yet, and thought, okay, this is gonna be a really tough track. It's the longest on the record and it's very complicated and has to be done very precisely. And so I had lower expectations for that one. But then the recording sounded so good because of these strings that I ended up going back and redoing a lot of stuff with the new strings. Like I redid all the leads on Lifeblood and I redid almost all of the Glimmering, which is crazy. I basically recorded that song twice, but it was worth it. It sounds better now. Like, and then you also have the value of A-Bing. It's like comparison is your friend when you're trying to make something great, because you really have perspective then. When you're making something that's never been made before, you have nothing to compare it to, but you can compare it with different versions of yourself making it, which is very valuable. So I think having the possibility to compare and having a long enough period of time to make something that you have the opportunity for reflection, and you're able to improve it, these things are useful. Now you have to know how to rein yourself in and not spend forever making something and eventually dull the edge. You have to know when to call it quits. But if you have a very clear barometer for quality and what you want to achieve, then you'll do it, right? You'll know, okay, this is good. Like, and I think that's important. And every artist should try to cultivate this. I think it's like, figure out what feels great to you. Like, what's a very tangible standard that will satisfy you? Not like, okay, you know, today it felt good, but yesterday it wasn't good, or, you know, tomorrow it will be different. Like, that does happen, but you want to have very clear criteria. Like, okay, there's nothing about this performance that I could objectively improve. It's done to the best of my ability, but more importantly, it's done in such a way that, like, there's nothing anyone could objectively criticize. That was important for me, making a very strong argument. It's like, okay, everything is performed in a way that feels good. It's not, oh, that's weird. Like, how are people going to feel about that? I don't want to have any doubts. So I just eliminated that aspect. And same with the production. It's like, hire great people. This is actually, okay, so it's funny. It takes me a while to kind of arrive at an answer to a lot of questions. I have to kind of talk my way into it. But I was just reminded of something really important that's probably a more valuable lesson specific to this album, which is hire the best people. Like, if you're serious about something, hire the best people. You will not regret it. Like, even though you will spend more money maybe in the short term, if you make something where you're trying to save money and you don't hire the people you think are the best for it, you're going to either spend the next 5 years apologizing for it until you make another thing that you think is better, or you'll want to try to go back and improve that thing, but it'll be too late because you either didn't record the sounds well enough, or you didn't have it mixed well enough, or you made a music video that you didn't like. So then you end up going, this isn't releasable. I have to go back and do it again. And nothing is more frustrating than, like, having to, you know, it's like you're making something and you have to cut it twice. You know, it's like, okay, it's like measure twice, cut once.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is very much my strategy too. It's like I demoed everything. I basically recorded everything at home before I recorded everything in the studio. So I had already made full demos. I was much more organized than with Worlds Within. Like, I had a Logic session with each song, with the tracks, and I had, like, recorded and edited already, and I already had named all the tracks. So, like, I already had this game plan I could give to the engineer. I worked at a great studio, worked with a great engineer who, was really, like, at the top of his game in terms of chops and organization and speed. And, I hired, like, the best mixing engineer I could. I worked with Adam Noble, who did the last few Leprous albums. And I worked with Krupa 13, who have done also music videos for Leprous and Behemoth. Just, like, amazing crew. Like, I know that they deliver quality. And I worked with Mahi, who did the visual art for Camoncello, for a couple of Camoncello albums that I released in the past. But we really upped the ante on this one, and he really committed and just did amazing work. So, and I could name lots of other people. It's like I just hired the best people, essentially, every step of the way, and then got really good results. And also, the other thing is that when you hire really professional people, they say they're going to do something and they do it. Yeah. It's like they give you the quality you're expecting, and they do it in a timely manner. And you're not like, okay, well, when is it going to happen? Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to plan my release around this, because I don't know if I'm going to get the assets I need on time. And when you're the one who is sort of you're on the masthead, like, you're the one fronting the project and you're the public facing person, you just look like a dick if you're not releasing things when you say you're going to release them.
Yeah.
It's not a good place to be in. And so I want to make sure that everything runs on time. And as the person hiring others, you realize how important this is. And it reminds me also, when I do hired work, how important it is to show the people I'm working for that, like, okay, if I'm working on your thing, it's going to get done at this time. And it's going to be done. I mean, I don't worry about the quality that I'm going to deliver because I'm obsessed with it, but no one's going to care more about your project than you. So the key is to hire really great people and then respect them like as much as possible, like give them super clear instructions so they can do their job. Give them a great experience of working for you by like paying them on time, and like just make yourself their favorite client, basically, if you can. That's always my goal. If I'm hiring someone, is like, I want to be their favorite client. I want them to always want to work with me, and that way I can have like an ongoing working relationship with them, because otherwise, like, then they're less enthusiastic about working on my project, because they're like, the last time I worked with this guy didn't have a good experience, but maybe I'll do it, but I could probably spend my time better working for someone else. So those are important things for me, for sure. Those are things that I learned from this record, that like I didn't regret spending more money and working with the best people, because I got clearly superior results. And I see it also from the audience response. It's like, oh, you made something very professional. We can see that. And that was the goal. It was like legitimacy, It's like,
well, I was going to say, it encompasses this entire interview, really. I mean, you say that music normies, they don't really give a shit about expense and all that kind of thing. But all that does, like, being true to yourself and delivering the products to the best of your abilities, both in musicianship and sound quality, it comes through, and it definitely comes through on this record. Like you say, you said you've been very genuine, to true to yourself, and it 100% comes through on this record.
Yeah, exactly. You feel it from the overall product and the energy with which it's delivered, and so that's important for me. And another lesson, I guess, was managing bigger budgets, but also doing it without a label, and realizing that, it's quite advantageous, actually, if you're able to save enough money to invest in something big and you don't have a label. That's great, because then you're not paying off their advance and you have no debt. Like, so then you can just immediately recoup the profits. So I recommend this to artists. If you're not already on a label, like, maybe focus just on quality output. If you're able to generate the capital necessary to create it. And we don't always talk about this. And I think that money talk in the arts is always this kind of weird taboo. Everyone's very uncomfortable around it. It's like, just treat art as a business. It's like, if you want a business, you have to invest in it. Like, you have to figure out what are the upfront costs, and then, what revenue can I generate? But like, you can't have the business if you don't invest in it. Like, and someone's got to do it, and I realized that I was doing so much work out of country, hiring so many people from, like the UK and Poland, that it didn't really work for me to get government grants, because they're generally supporting things that are being done in Canada, and it's great that we have them. But I just thought, also, like, I'm never going to have enough funding from them anyway. So like, and I want to do things at my own pace, and I don't want to answer to anyone. I'm just like, I'm going to do this when I want to do it, on my timeline. And I don't want to like be kind of beholden to anyone. Like, oh, thank you so much for the funding. It's just like, no, like, I made it. Here it is. Enjoy. Yeah.
Where do you go from here then? So the album's dropped. What can fans expect next?
Another album pretty soon, actually.
Yeah.
Like, cool. Surprisingly soon. Yeah. So there will be new music in 2026.
Oh, wow.
Cool. And expect very regular single drops. Lots of singles, hopefully lots of videos. Again, if money and schedule permit. But yeah, lots of new music for sure. And more touring also, primarily in the UK and Europe. For 2026. Yeah.
Let me know.
For sure. Yeah. There'll be a bunch of UK dates in March, April. But then it's likely also that I'll be back again in the UK and Europe in fall 2026. So the goal is, once I've released this music, then I can focus more on just playing lots of shows to support it. Lots of new merch. Yeah, lots of nice vinyl editions, and hopefully more shirts and stuff. So that sort of thing, really. Just trying to keep that momentum going, but Yeah, I have a lot of music for this project that's written and that still needs to be recorded. So I think there will be a pretty steady stream of new output for the coming years, actually.
Cool.
So that much I can guarantee.
Cool. Well, that's it for me, man.
Hey, thank you so much.
No, it's been good.
Really, really great chatting, and I appreciate you taking the time. And
no, don't be silly, mate.
Yeah,
I mean it when I say it. Like, you and Nathaniel are like the goats. You are the goats. Like, I listen to rock and metal. That's generally my wheelhouse. But when I found Inheritance 2021, it just blew me away. And then when I've dived into your work and Nathaniel's work, it's just everything is absolutely like the cream of the crop, mate. It's absolutely class.
Oh, bless you, man. I appreciate that. And we make it with you in mind. Yeah. Well, hopefully, people dig it, and they spin it, and we'll see what happens. But
I can't see how they could. Yeah. It's incredible. So appreciate your time, mate.
Yeah, likewise. Well, have a great rest of your day, and we'll be in touch. And take care.
Yep, cool. See you later, mate.
All right. Bye.